Welcome back to episode 35 of Daily Drives. I've got a good one today, a little bit interesting because I'm talking about paranormal and the supernatural. Woo! So I just finished recording the last episode where I was talking about the small little patrol base that I was stationed at in Iraq, and there are a few kind of paranormal things that happened there that I just want to talk about. So I've always been interested in kind of ghosts and stuff like that. I've never seen one. I never really had that kind of that tingly feeling or anything like that. I know a lot of people have, and a lot of people like to hear stories about it. So the area that we were in at this little base was right on the Iraq and Iran border, and during the war that those two countries had, there's a lot of fighting, a lot of casualties that happened right in that location where we were at, right where that base was at. And so we'd go out and we'd do these missions, and they called them UXOs, or unexploded ordnances, which is basically just any munitions, whether it's a bomb or a grenade, what be it, that hasn't detonated or exploded. And you would see this literally everywhere where we were going. That was one of the biggest threats, because if you went off of any type of trail, there's a good chance that you might hit a landmine or you might step on one of these UXOs. The place is just literally littered everywhere with it. But regardless, so there's a lot of heavy fighting and bombing that happened in this particular area. And again, a lot of it had to deal with it being so close to the border between these two countries. Iraq was preparing for, if Iran had invaded, they had all these landmines set up. And you would see tanks out in the middle of nowhere that were burned up from 20 or 30 years ago. And you would even find remnants of like uniforms and stuff like that. So like helmets and stuff like that, old 80s, 90s era helmets. You'd go out, you would find that. You would find clothing and boots and stuff like that. So anyways, when I first got there, I was part of the small 4 or 5 man team that was there to kind of do the initial recon and gain a sense of how everything was supposed to work once the rest of our unit got there. And so one of these nights I was kind of shadowing them with their security. So again, there are a few guard towers around the base, and then at the main entrance, which they call the ECP, or the entry control point, they had a up armored vehicle sitting there. And there was so there's 2 people that manned that one. It was myself and one of the guys that had been there for the past year or so. We were talking about something, and eventually it got on to the topic of kind of paranormal stuff and stuff that had happened there. And I kid you not, while we were talking about this, the area outside of the vehicle was like big gravel rocks. Like there was sand in certain areas, but for like 50 feet or so around this vehicle, it's nothing but rocks. So if someone's coming up to the vehicle, you know that they're there. You hear that kind of squishing of the gravel sound as you walk on it. So we're there talking about something, and we started to hear the rocks, like someone's walking up towards the vehicle. And they had a FLIR, which just detects heat signatures, or like your body at night. If you ever look through a FLIR, I know like a lot of police units use it for like chases and stuff like that. But your body shows up as just this white blob of heat compared to this like black background. And so we had that mounted on the vehicle, and we go and I look at it and I scan around trying to figure out who's around us, who's coming up to the vehicle, and there's no one there. Like I have no way to explain it. I looked there, I physically, I had my night vision, so I turn it on, I look around, there's no one around the vehicle, so I have no clue what that was. Definitely wasn't animal, because first of all, we would have seen that, and then it wouldn't have made the same sound that a human would have, like it's walking up. So the sound was like a human walking on gravel straight up to our vehicle. There's nothing there. And then you would hear stories too. So what made this base even more eerie was that for like security measures and stuff like that, we would black out the base at night. So once the sun set down, I think there's like a single light bulb on base that would illuminate, and that was it. They tried not to use white light or stuff like that. So with your flashlights, a lot of the movement that you did at night was with a red light flashlight, because it gives off less of a light signature. So it's super eerie just even walking around this camp at night, because I mean you have pretty much this maze of these giant HESCO walls, or these different barriers or T-walls. You're walking through that, and if you don't have your flashlight with you, I mean you can put your hand in front of your face and you're not going to see it. I mean it's literally that dark. You have the stars above, and that's it. There's no lighting on base, because we don't want to kind of outline to the enemy where the base is. So you just get this kind of creepy and this eerie feeling as you're walking around this base at night, because you don't know if something's lurking, about to jump out of the corner or stuff like that. So just, again, probably had a lot to do with, if you believe, with like energy and stuff like that, just the amount of death that happened in that area. A lot of that is kind of, I'd imagine, is probably kind of trapped in that local vicinity, and you definitely feel it when you're walking around with no lights on by yourself at night. So we'd hear other stories too, like the interpreter that I talked about that we had. He would tell us a few stories of these would happen on base, where he would be walking, he had his own flashlights, walking around at night trying to get to his tent or whatever, and he sees this apparition, but it's not a full body. He looks at it, and the only thing he sees is like from the waist up. Just he can't make out the face or anything like that. It's more of like a shadow. But he said that he saw this thing, and then it ended up walking through this concrete wall, this 8-foot concrete wall. This shadow just disappears into it, and he's a pretty reliable guy. I trust this guy. He's not one that would tell a story just for the sake of telling a story. So he told that. There are a few other stories that he told. I don't remember those. And then we had another guy in our platoon, and we would go out on missions, and sometimes on these missions we're sitting in one place at night trying to do like a surveillance of the area. So you're sitting there, you have your night vision on, and he starts telling us a few of these stories. So we're out in the middle of this desert. Again, you got the UXOs and all this stuff on the ground. At night you can't see, so it makes it even worse when we do have to go off of a path. Anyways, we're sitting there, we get into our spot where we're going to be for the next hour or so, and a lot of times you just tell stories and stuff like that to pass the time, because there's nothing else to do. You're not going to fall asleep, and the way to not fall asleep is to tell stories, try to stay engaged somewhat, keep your interest up. So he starts telling us a story about his dad, and how his dad was, I don't know if he was a demonologist or he was a ghost hunter or what he was, but he said that as he was growing up, he would go to all these different locations, and like he would do, whatever hunting or investigations that he did. And he said the one story he was talking about was, and he was super young at the time, said that being around the stuff that his dad exposed him to, that he could actually see a lot of this stuff, which, that's kind of creepy. But he said that there's one time they were staying at a hotel, and it was the middle of the night, and he had seen the devil on a cloud floating in front of him. So he woke up middle of the night, and all he sees is this devil-looking figure, right in front of him, floating on this cloud in front. And he told the story a lot better than I can. There's probably a lot more details that I'm missing out on. It kind of scared the shit out of me, is being out there hearing these stories. You're in the middle of literally nowhere, out in this desert. You don't know who else is out there, and we're sitting here telling these ghost stories. But there's probably a ton of different stories that other people have, and things, weird experiences that they had. But that was the ones that I had. If you guys had heard any ghost stories, either from the Middle East or back home, or things that you experienced or saw, let me know in the comments. I'd be interested to hear, because again, I'm always a fan of paranormal stuff. It never really happens to me, but I'm always interested in hearing what other people have.